The rain was drowning the town that night, but the hand on the door knocker wasn't wet. Outside, the storm howled. Wind slipped through the gaps in the windows, rattling the old wooden shutters. Rain came down so hard that the single streetlight on the road looked like a smudge of pale yellow. I lived at the far edge of town. The nearest house was a 5-minute walk away. Power had gone out earlier that afternoon, and the only light inside came from 2 candles on the kitchen counter. My nights were simple: make a cup of coffee, sit in my old chair, and listen to the rain. But that night, a faint metallic sound from the back door broke the routine. The doorknob turned slowly, almost as if someone was hesitating. Then it stopped. Would you have looked, or would you have pulled the curtains shut? When the sound stopped, only the rain remained. Seconds later, the wooden door gave a faint creak as if pushed ever so slightly. My heart thudded in my chest. A silhouette appeared in the window. Not clear, just the slope of a shoulder and the shape of a head, standing there in the rain. My fingers tightened around my cup until hot coffee spilled over my hand and onto the floor. Could it be my neighbor? I thought. But at this hour, and that hand, still dry, what would you do? Go to the door or hide? Tell me in the comments, because even now, I'm not sure what I should have done. The chimney pipe of my old coal stove shivered in the wind, its metallic rattle echoing in my ears. The silhouette shifted to the side, no longer fully visible, but still there. I could feel it. I grabbed my phone. Battery, 3%. Calling the police would take at least half an hour for help to arrive. I pressed myself into the corner of the kitchen, holding my breath. Then, footsteps. Dry footsteps. No one walking through rain should sound dry. This wasn't possible. They came closer. I felt the vibration through the wall. A pause, then the doorknob turned again. The house was silent, but the pounding in my ears was deafening. The candle flame trembled, and then the slow scrape of fingernails across the wood. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked, breathing so close they could have heard mine. Then, 3 hard knocks, the door shook, the phone trembled in my hand. I tapped the screen to dial, and someone passed by the window. The sound at the door stopped. If this happened to you, would you run to the police or open the door? Seriously, leave a comment. I need to know because I still don't have the answer. Nothing happened for a while, just the rain. And a faint hum, maybe wind, maybe footsteps. I finally gathered the courage to look out the kitchen window. An empty road, a muddy yard, no one there. But in the wet dirt, 2 dry footprints led straight to my door. I looked at the handle. I still don't know what I experienced, but I do know this: on rainy nights, I listen to every single sound coming from the back door. Have you ever had a night like that? Tell me. Maybe we're both part of the same story. They say nothing ever happens in Birch Hollow, but that night, I learned why the locals lock their doors when it rains. I've spent most of my life in the countryside. Storms never bothered me, until that night. The rain wasn't gentle. It hammered the roof like thousands of tiny fists. Wind whistled through the trees, twisting the shadows of their branches across my windows. My only light came from an old gas lamp on the desk. Each gust rattled the glass and made the flame tremble. Birch Hollow is a small village, just a few houses and a narrow road winding through the hills. My nearest neighbor, old Mrs. Clayton, lives half a mile away. She's always warned me, when the rain falls hard, lock every door and window. Don't ask why. I always thought it was just superstition until I heard the first knock. It echoed through the wood. Not loud, not soft, like someone simply reminding me they were there. A chill crawled up my spine. I turned the lamp's wick down until the flame shrank. Outside only rain and wind, yet I pressed my ear to the door. A second knock, this time harder. For a moment I thought, could it be Mrs. Clayton? But at this hour, in this weather? I stepped toward the corner to grab my coat, and that's when a shadow slid past the window. Not clear, just the outline of a shoulder. If it were you, would you have pulled the curtain aside, or pretended you hadn't seen it? My heart was pounding. The rain seemed louder against the glass. My eyes locked on the doorknob. It turned, slowly, like someone hesitating, testing if it was locked. Every instinct told me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I snatched my old cell phone from the kitchen counter, battery at 4%. If I called the police, it would take them at least half an hour to get here. I held my breath and slipped into the corner of the kitchen. Then came the footsteps, but not the wet, slapping steps of someone in the rain. These footsteps were dry. Do you think that's even possible? Dry footsteps on a soaked ground? They grew closer. The faint vibration from the wooden floor traveled through the walls into me. A pause, then the doorknob turned again. The house was still, but my heartbeat roared in my ears. The lamp's flame wavered, and then nails, slow, thin, dragging across the wood from top to bottom. I wanted to scream, but my throat tightened, breathing so close it felt like they could hear mine. 3 sharp knocks. The door shook. The phone trembled in my hand. I pressed the call button, and someone passed by the window. The sound at the door stopped. What would you do? Call the police or open the door? Tell me in the comments, because I still don't know my own answer. For a while, nothing, just rain, and a faint creak in the distance. Was it wind or footsteps? I couldn't tell. I finally looked through the kitchen window. An empty road, a muddy yard, no one in sight. But leading up to the door, 2 dry footprints, untouched by the rain. I reached for the doorknob. It was cold, and that cold clung to my hands long after that night. I still don't know what happened, but I know this. In Birch Hollow, when it rains, I listen to every sound at the door. Have you ever had a night like that? Tell me, maybe we're both part of the same story. They say if you stand by Willow Creek on a rainy night, the water will whisper your name. That night, I heard mine. I grew up in a small town in northern Montana, where rain usually meant nothing more than muddy roads and wet boots. It never meant fear, until that night. Willow Creek runs just outside town, beneath an old wooden bridge. My cabin sits upstream, hidden among the pines. The nearest neighbor is almost a kilometer away, and when the rain turns the roads to mud, nobody comes. That evening, the sky sagged under dark, heavy clouds. Rain poured so hard that the dim streetlight by the bridge was nothing but a faint yellow blur. As always, I lit the stove, made some coffee, and listened to the rain pounding on the roof. But that night, the rain wasn't alone. From the creek came a whisper, my name. At first, I thought it was just the wind twisting through the trees, but seconds later, I heard it again, clearer this time. A soft, low voice. Michael. I froze. The rhythm of the rain hadn't changed. The wind still howled the same, but the voice was coming from right by the water's edge. I set my cup down and stepped toward the window. Outside was pitch black, lit only by the lamp near the bridge glowing like a pale yellow ring. I squinted. No one. I stepped back, and then it came again. Michael. Longer. Closer. If it were you, would you follow that voice? Or shut it out and pretend you never heard it? I grabbed my coat and stood at the door. The wind threw cold rain into my face. I looked toward the creek, only tree trunks and mist. Still, the voice called from somewhere between them. I took my flashlight, pulled on my boots. When I opened the door, a sharp gust rushed in, making the lamp's flame shiver. I stepped outside. The muddy path squelched under my boots as I followed the sound. It came again, clearer, sharper. And this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a voice, speaking, "Come here." The closer I got to the bridge, the heavier the rain fell. My flashlight's beam was swallowed by the mist. Then I heard it, no longer soft but cold, commanding, "Michael, come closer." My chest tightened. I raised the flashlight. Under the bridge stood a figure. I couldn't see the face, but the shoulders looked soaked, and then I realized the rain wasn't touching them. The drops slid off unnaturally, vanishing before they reached the ground. I took a step. I turned to head back, and that's when I saw them. 2 dry footprints on the surface of the water. They led from the middle of the creek to the shore, right in front of me. My knees shook. I closed my eyes, breathed deep. When I looked again, they were gone. Back at the cabin, the door handle was still cold. That cold stayed in my fingers for minutes. I still don't know what I saw that night, but I do know this. If you ever hear your name in the water at Willow Creek on a rainy night, don't answer. What about you? Would you? Tell me in the comments. Maybe we're living 2 different endings to the same story. When it rains in Pine Hollow, you can still hear trains on the old railroad bridge, even though no train has passed here in decades. I've spent most of my life in a remote Wyoming town. Around here, rain usually means muddy roads and heavy air. But in Pine Hollow, rain carries something different. My cabin sits near an abandoned railroad bridge. The tracks were torn up years ago, yet locals swear they still hear a train cross it on stormy nights. They say it's just the wind or metal groaning in the weather. I believed that too, until that night. The sky was almost black. Rain poured like a curtain into the valley, hiding the shapes of the distant trees. Inside, my stove was burning. I'd just poured a cup of coffee and settled by the window, listening to the steady rhythm of the storm, when I heard it. First, a faint metallic squeal. Then, the sound of wheels on rails. I froze, straining my ears. The rain's rhythm stayed the same, but the wheels, they were getting closer, heading for the bridge. I grabbed my lantern and stepped outside. The wind drove the rain hard into my face. I looked toward the bridge, empty, just its rusted skeleton against the mist. I was about to turn back when a whistle cut through the storm. High-pitched, clear, and far too close. Something pulled me forward. The muddy path squelched under my boots. The closer I got, the louder it became. Wheels, and that whistle, but no tracks. Through the fog, a faint yellow light appeared. Not car headlights, this light flickered, like the lamps on an old steam engine. A cold gust swept past me as I reached the bridge. The planks beneath my feet shuddered, as if that invisible train was crossing right under me. Then, something dropped onto the wet wood in front of me. A train ticket. No date, no destination, just my name. As I stared at it, the sound changed. It wasn't just wheels anymore. It was hundreds of whispers circling my head, all repeating my name. I raised my lantern. The yellow light in the fog was moving toward me. Fast. But there was still no train in sight. I stepped into the middle of the bridge. Water crashed against the supports below. The wind shifted, and the rain changed direction. That's when I saw him. Tall, a long coat, a wide-brimmed hat. His face lost in shadow. In his hand, a pocket watch. He opened it, and the ticking swallowed the sound of the rain. He stepped forward, dry footsteps, in the downpour. He looked like he was about to speak, but instead, the whistle exploded all around me. My ears rang. I blinked, and he was gone. The bridge still shook beneath me. Floating in the air ahead was that same ticket, completely dry. I took it. The cold sank into my skin like... At home, I set the ticket on my table. By morning, it had vanished. In its place, an old, rusted train whistle, dripping wet. Since that night, I've never crossed the bridge when it rains in Pine Hollow, but sometimes, when the wind changes, I still hear a train. So tell me, if you found a ticket with your name on it, would you step onto the bridge? Maybe this trip isn't meant to be taken alone.